Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, 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 welcome. Good morning, my name is Dr. Dieter. I'm coming to you from Fort Worth, Texas. The topic of our talk today is gonna be chronic medical conditions, how chronic medical conditions are due to what I call a leaky faucet in your life, and that treating that leaky faucet can help address your chronic medical condition. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So today's topic of conversation, we're going to be talking about chronic medical conditions and how those chronic medical conditions are due to a leaky faucet. And we're going to go through that. I'm going to circle back and forth between this view where I'm doing some teaching on the board to the other view, where you do not see the board. So welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Dr. Dieter. I'm glad for you guys joining my live today. I'm coming to you guys from Fort Worth, Texas. Feel free to drop a comment in the chat where you're joining from. I hold board certifications in two fields. I'm a board certified internal medicine physician. I'm also a board certified pediatrician. Today's topic of conversation, we're going to be talking about chronic medical conditions and how chronic medical conditions are due to what I call a leaky faucet. And that leaky faucet is insulin resistance, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. So I just want to give a welcome to you guys joining us. If you're joining us from the Northeast, maybe you're joining from New York, Pennsylvania, Vermont, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts. If you're joining from New Hampshire, welcome. Feel free to drop a comment in the chat what state you're joining from. I'm always curious to know where my listeners are joining me from. Fim, welcome. Arega, welcome. Chavones, welcome. Letitia, welcome, welcome, welcome. If you're joining from the Midwest, maybe you're joining from the Dakotas, North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Missouri, Kansas. Maybe you're joining from Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin. I want to welcome you to my show today. Maybe you're joining from Kansas or Kansas City. I want to welcome you. Maybe you're joining us from the South. If you're in Delaware, you're in Florida, you're in Georgia. Again, if you hear any of your states and you're from any of these states, feel free to drop a comment in the chat. Joining from Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Kentucky, welcome. West Virginia, welcome. South Carolina, North Carolina, Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Texas, the Lone Star State where I am, welcome. Mary, welcome. Crystal, welcome. If you're joining from the West Coast, maybe you're in Arizona, Colorado, Montana, New Mexico, Oregon, Washington State, California, Alaska, Wyoming, Utah, welcome, welcome, welcome. I want to introduce myself. My name is Dr. Dieter. I hold board certifications in two fields. I'm a board certified pediatrician. I'm equally a board certified internal medicine physician. I've become passionate about what we call lifestyle health because many of the diseases that we face today in modern society as a result of the choices we make and as food choices and lifestyle. So today I'm going to be talking about chronic medical conditions, and maybe 1 second here. We'll be talking about chronic medical conditions and how those chronic medical conditions as a result of a leaky faucet. I want to start topic of our conversation, chronic medical conditions and how those chronic medical conditions are due to a leaky faucet. And I have this depiction here, and I'm going to go through what I mean by that. Most of the chronic medical conditions we face today, as a result of a leaky faucet, and that leaky faucet is insulin resistant. So I want to turn and ask you guys these questions. The statistics say that in the United States, about 9 out of every 10 people living in the United States has what we call metabolic dysfunction and energy deficiency. And that will usually result suffer from a chronic medical condition. If you suffer from a chronic medical condition, drop a comment in the chat, CMC, abbreviation for chronic medical condition. Whether that chronic medical condition is insomnia, difficulty sleeping, whether that chronic medical condition is cravings, whether that chronic medical condition is arthritis, whether that chronic medical condition is high blood pressure, whether that chronic medical condition is high cholesterol, feel free to drop a comment in the chat. What I want to do today is to explain to us how our chronic medical conditions as a result of what I call a leaky faucet. And then I'm going to teach you 2 things that we can do to reverse that leaky faucet. So let's go. I'm going to circle back and forth between this screen and the screen on the board. So I'm going to return to the whiteboard right now and we'll talk. So, all right, so our chronic medical conditions that we face today, if you have diabetes, if you have high blood pressure, if you have sleep apnea, if you have high cholesterol, if you have gout, if you have arthritis, if you have irritable bowel syndrome, if you have fatty liver, if you have obesity or you're overweight, or if you have prediabetes, I cannot name them all. But all those chronic medical conditions come from what we call a leaky faucet, okay? And that leaky faucet is insulin resistance. I'm going to talk a little bit about what insulin resistance is. So let me describe to you the state of our healthcare today. And the state of our healthcare today, you have a leaky faucet. A leaky faucet, insulin resistance, causing all the chronic medical conditions that we face. And those chronic medical conditions that we face are likened to water pooling on the floor. So the leaky faucet, insulin resistance, is causing water to pool on the floor. That's the state of our healthcare today. And what is happening? That water pooling on the floor, are all the symptoms that we have, or all the medical conditions that we have. The water pooling is the diabetes. It's the hypertension. It's the high blood pressure. It's the sleep apnea. It's the gout. It's the arthritis. You name it. Any chronic medical condition that you have. It's the high cholesterol. All of these are water pooling on the floor. Do you think about that water pool right there? The water pooling on the floor are these chronic medical conditions. Now, why is the water pooling on the floor? The water is pooling on the floor because somehow the faucet has been left on. The faucet is leaking, and causing this water to pool on the floor. Drip, 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 drip. Okay? I'm trying to describe the state of our current healthcare system. Now you may ask then, Doc, if the water pooling on the floor is our symptoms, then what is the mob? You know what the mob is? The mob are all the medications that your primary doctor has put you on to mop the floor. That's the mob. So let's say that you are on, let's say, what's the mob? Let's say that you are on, let's say that you're on medicines for diabetes. The mob, it may be your metformin. Or maybe your insulin. Maybe you have high blood pressure and you're on HCTZ. That's a mob. Maybe you have sleep apnea and you're on a CPAP mask. That's a mob. Maybe you have gout and you're on colchicine. That's a mob. Maybe you have arthritis and every now and then you're taking ibuprofen for your arthritis. That's a mob. You get the picture? Maybe you have high cholesterol and your doctor has put you on Lipitor. That's a mob. So, describing the state of our current healthcare system. You have a dripping faucet, insulin resistance, which I'll come to it, which has resulted in water pooling on the floor, symptoms, diseases, diabetes, high blood pressure, sleep apnea, gout, arthritis, high cholesterol, and your doctor has handed you this mob to take care of these issues. He's handed you all these medicines to take care of these issues. Now, the question is, if the problem is right here and you're taking a mop and mopping these issues, how long are you going to keep mopping the floor? Are you going to mop the floor? So let's say you walk into your kitchen one morning and you notice that the faucet is lit. You notice that water is pooling on the floor. You don't notice the faucet first of all. You just notice a pool of water on the floor and you're like, oh, where's this pool of water from? Your instinct is to grab a mop, and that's the right instinct, initially when you're trying to sort out what is what. That's the right instinct. You grab a mop to mop the floor, okay? When you grab the mop to mop the floor, that's a temporizing measure when you're trying to figure out why is the floor wet in the first place. Every reasonable person who sees a floor that is wet, while grabbing the mop, will ask the question, where's this water from? Why is the floor wet in the first place? So, you do that, you mop the floor, but you notice that water keeps coming from somewhere. And you look up and you notice, the kitchen faucet is dripping. So now you know there is water on the floor because the kitchen faucet is dripping. Now I'll ask you guys this question. Once you know that the kitchen faucet is dripping, does it make sense to continue to take the mop and mop the floor over and over? Take the mop and mop the water pooling on the floor when you have noticed that the kitchen faucet is leaking? Let me get some answers. I'll flip over right here. Does it make sense now that you lift your head up and you notice, I have a problem here. The reason why there is water pooling on my floor is because the kitchen faucet is dripping. Does it make sense to continue mopping the floor? If you think it makes no sense, drop a comment in the chat, no sense. I think it makes no sense. But that's what our current healthcare system is. That's the state of our current healthcare system. So you have diabetes. Your doctor has given you metformin, which is a mop, and has told you, hey, Bob, I want you to mop the floor on Monday, mop the floor on Tuesday, mop the floor on Wednesday, mop the floor on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Come January, mop. Come February, mop. Come March, mop. You're mopping from January to December. Whereas the main problem is a leaky faucet. Let's go back up. Let's go back to our screen. Whereas the main problem is the leaky faucet. Right? It makes no sense to continue to use a mop to mop the floor over and over when you have noticed that the water is dripping from the faucet, drip, 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 and you're mopping on Monday, mopping on Tuesday, mopping on Wednesday, mopping from January to December. How many of you guys have ever been told that if you have diabetes, you're going to be on medications for the rest of your life. If you have, drop a comment in the chat told. How many of you guys have been told that if you have high blood pressure, you're going to be on medications for the rest of your life? If you have, drop a comment in the chat. When they tell you that, when you've been told that by your primary care doctor, they're basically telling you, Peggy or Jonathan or Mary, listen, I want you to continue mopping the floor every day, and taking care of this pool of water that is dripping. The best way to handle this, Peggy, or the best way to handle this, Jonathan, is just to be mopping the floor repeatedly. It makes no sense, but yet that is the state of our current healthcare system. You see, I'll tell you this. Our modern medicine has advanced so much. I give props to modern medicine. I give a praise to modern medicine. When you're having an acute issue, a life-threatening issue, an acute condition, let's say you break a hip, let's say you have an infection, you have a pneumonia, let's say you have an appendicitis, a ruptured appendix, or what have you, those acute conditions, our modern medical care is top-notch. It will save your life. You're having an active heart attack. Our modern medical system, is top-notch for that, to be able to address those acute issues. But it fails patients with chronic issues. Chronic conditions, our modern medical system, I can score them a 0 on 10. We do not deal well with chronic medical conditions. We have sentenced our patients to using mops to mop the floor every day, when the right thing to do is to do what common sense asks you to do. Go to the root. Why is the floor wet in the first place? The floor is wet because the faucet is leaking. Well, if the faucet is leaking, can we fix the faucet? Did somebody leave the faucet turned on? And can we turn off the faucet? Does it make sense to continue to use a mop every day? That is the state of our current medical system. Fantastic in treating acute conditions, great. Chronic conditions like diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, they give you a life sentence with a mop in your hand to be mopping the floor all the time, and never asking the question, why is the floor wet in the first place? If this makes sense to you, and if this sounds like it's the right thing to go about, or the right question to ask, drop a comment in the chat right. And that's why I'm talking about this. Our chronic medical conditions today are due to this leaky faucet. There's a cause of the problem, insulin resistance. It has resulted in water pooling on the floor, all these disease conditions. And yet, our failed healthcare system sentences us to lifelong medications, placing a mop in our hands to tell us to mop from January to December. When is relief going to come? Now, I say this. Let's talk now about insulin resistance. I want you guys to understand what insulin resistance is, and how insulin resistance is that leaky chronic faucet, is that leaky faucet that's causing all of these illnesses. Let me ask you guys, has any of you heard of the hormone insulin? If you know anything about the hormone insulin, drop a comment in the chat. Has any of you heard about insulin resistance? If you know anything about insulin resistance, drop a comment in the chat. I'm trying to understand where my audience is, so that as I take you through this, I am sensitive to what you know and what you don't know, and not to be assuming of the terms I use as a medical professional. So, insulin resistance. Is any of you guys familiar with any of those two things? And so that I have a sense of where my audience is. Insulin resistance. Anybody heard of insulin? Anybody heard of insulin resistance? Comments? Thoughts? All right. What I'm gonna do, cellular glucose transport. Great. Yeah, insulin important in cellular glucose transport. Thank you, Femi. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break down what insulin is first of all, because to understand what insulin resistance is, it will be important to understand what insulin resistance is going to be important to understand what the job of insulin is in the first place. When you understand, then when we start talking about insulin resistance and how is the leaky faucet, then you will understand how that plays in. So I go back to the board again. Now, I mentioned that insulin resistance is this leaky faucet in our life, causing drip, 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 causing these symptoms, and our failed medical system causing us to have a mob in our hands with this. Now, what is insulin resistance? To be able to understand what insulin resistance is important to understand what insulin is in the first place and what insulin does. So, insulin is a hormone, right? Insulin is a hormone that is produced by the pancreas. You know, a hormone is a biological molecule that has a specific function. It dictates to the cell to do something. That's what a hormone is. It's a biological molecule. It has a specific function that it commands or dictates to the cell to do a specific function. So insulin is a hormone. Insulin is a hormone. And that hormone is produced by the pancreas. I want you to think about insulin as the most important hormone in our survival. I call insulin hormone numero uno in terms of importante. There is no hormone that trumps insulin. It sits at the pinnacle, at the peak of our survival. It dictates, think about a house or a structure or an organization, the CEO. It sits at the peak, of that organization. It dictates the structure and smooth functioning of the body of that organization. That's what insulin is, and that's why I call it hormone numero uno in terms of importante. Why is that? This is the reason why. The job of insulin, this is the job of insulin, to mobilize. The job of insulin is to mobilize glucose out of the blood into the cell. This is a cell. You see, when we eat, the byproduct of anything that we eat is the release of glucose into the blood. When food is eaten and goes through the digestive tract and digestion occurs and absorption occurs, the end result is that glucose is released in the blood. Okay? That glucose now, by the command of insulin, is taken up so that glucose is in the blood right there. So remember, a hormone is a biological molecule that has an effect on a cell, a particular effect on a cell, causes a cell to do something specifically. So insulin now mobilizes glucose. When glucose is released, after digestion and absorption, it mobilizes glucose to be released, mobilizes glucose, into the cell from the blood. So when glucose gets into the cell, glucose now goes through, is fed into this special organelle in the cell called the mitochondria. The mitochondria. How many of you guys had heard about the mitochondria? In your younger days in science class or your biology class or what have you. And if you remember what the nickname of the mitochondria is, drop a comment in the chat. I would like to know. And so the glucose gets shunted into the cell. When the glucose gets shunted into the cell, it's now taken up by the mitochondria. When the glucose is taken up by the mitochondria, it now goes through a complex series of reactions called the electron transport chain. When glucose goes through the electron transport chain, the end result is the production of an energy molecule called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. This is an energy molecule. Now, this is why insulin is important, because every cell in the body needs glucose. Every cell in the body needs energy. Every cell. You see, for everything to happen in the body, we have to pay for with energy. So this ATP, adenosine triphosphate, is an energy molecule. So why then is insulin the most critical hormone in man's existence? Why then is insulin I consider to be hormone numero uno in terms of importante? Is because without insulin, you cannot make energy. And we need energy in the cell. I'm going to flip over and make sure that you guys follow me so far. If you follow me so far, drop a comment in the chat, I follow. As I go on, I do not want to pile on a lot of explanations and you're lost. So I'm trying to make sure that you guys are following as I go through. So that's why I consider insulin to be the most important hormone. So if you follow that so far, drop a comment in the chat, follow, or say press on, or give me the gas, so that I could move on to the next. Now, we need energy for everything in the body, everything. So as I'm speaking to you right now, I am gesticulating with my arms. My muscles are contracting and relaxing. For my muscles to contract and relax to enable me to gesticulate, sodium, potassium pumps, calcium pumps in the muscles that help the muscles contract and relax need to be furnished with energy. If those pumps do not have those energy, they cannot contract and relax. As I'm speaking to you right now, what happens is that I form a thought in my brain. When I form a thought in my brain, right, that thought that now has to be go through nerve impulses to trigger the speech area of my brain to okay, that thought that Dr. Dieter has in his brain, now speech area, bring that thought out. For that message to be transmitted, those signals, the nervous impulses to be transmitted from where I form the thought to the speech area in the brain to be able to talk, it requires energy. Without energy, that critical messaging fails to go through. Everything in our body needs energy. For me to digest a steak, if I eat a New York steak, and let's say my enzymes are supposed to be released to digest the protein in that steak, the release of enzymes require energy. So the point that I'm trying to make is that everything in our body needs energy, every action. And we pay for that energy with ATP, insulin. We pay for that energy with ATP, and insulin secures that energy. So you can see why insulin is the most critical hormone in our existence. And one other thing, in our biology, we have our DNA. Our DNA often undergoes constant wear and tear. This is how the DNA looks like. I'll show you this. Let me go back to the board. This is how the DNA looks like. Our DNA looks like this. It's what we call a double helix structure, okay? That's how our DNA looks. Now, Our DNA contains the genes that code for all the different molecules, proteins, enzymes, you name it, in the body. And every time, all those things have to be produced for the system to move smoothly. You have in the DNA genes right here that are located in the DNA. Now, these genes are protected by this double helix and are not exposed to be able to be decoded. So, for your DNA to be able to say, okay, you know what, Jonathan needs this enzyme. This enzyme is a protein. I need to make this enzyme so that he can digest this protein. The DNA has to do what we call a protein synthesis. And during protein synthesis, what happens is that the DNA has to unwind. So this DNA goes from looking like this to looking like this. It has to unwind like this, and a portion. So let's say if the portion of the DNA where the gene to digest protein is located in these areas, okay? So what's gonna happen is that this area of the DNA is gonna unwind, and the remaining part will look like this. Okay? And when that area of the DNA unwinds, it now exposes the genes here, and there is a mechanism that comes here and reads and decodes the genes and then makes the enzyme that the body needs. Now, I bring that up to say that there is constant wear and tear because this process is happening millions of times in our bodies for so many different things to be made. So think about the double helix. It's like this, and then it winds open, it winds close, it winds open, it winds close, it winds open. That repeated movement of winding close, winding open, winding close, winding open results in wear and tear of the wear and tear. It's just like you have a door. If you had a door and you had to move that door repeatedly, open and close, the hinges of that door are going to, have wear and tear. So the open, close results in DNA damage. And I'll put the DNA damage like this. So just think about where I put the X's here. It results in DNA damage. Now, the cell has a corrective mechanism. I'll flip over. The cell has a corrective mechanism to address DNA damage. Every time there is DNA damage, what happens is that you need energy to be able to repair that DNA damage. So the cell comes and the body comes and realizes, okay, the constant opening and closing and opening and closing and opening has resulted in wear and tear in the DNA, and there has been DNA damage, mutations. We need to repair these mutations so that these mutations do not now lead to a cancer. And guess what, guys? To repair DNA damage, I want to go to the board, DNA damage. When you have DNA damage, DNA repair requires energy. So DNA repair needs energy. And energy here is ATP. So if you don't have insulin being able to cause this process to occur, to have energy, the cells of the body do not have the energy to repair the damaged DNA. When they're done, that damaged DNA now propagates into a cancer. Energy is so important, and insulin secures that. And when you have insulin resistance, it then causes you to have diseases like cancer, which is one of the water pooling on the floor. So that is what insulin does. That's the job of insulin. Mobilize glucose out of the blood into the cell so that energy can be produced. Now that you understand the implications of what insulin does, then now it is easier to then understand what insulin resistance is. What then is insulin resistance? Insulin resistance is anything when there is any process that results in the breakdown. When there is a breakdown anywhere in this process, where there is a breakdown of insulin mobilizing glucose out of the blood into the cell for energy to be produced, anywhere in this process, we say you have insulin resistance. And that insulin resistance is the cause of this leaky faucet. If insulin secures energy, and all the cells in the body need energy to function, you know what the definition of disease is? The definition of a disease is a cell that has malfunctioned, a malfunctioning cell. And the numero uno reason why a cell malfunctions is because it doesn't have the energy it needs to work properly. That is a simple definition for disease. And when you now have insulin resistance, which is that dripping faucet, which is that causing water pool on the floor, you now have all the chronic modern day medical conditions like the diabetes, like the high blood pressure, like the high cholesterol, like the sleep apnea, like the gout, like the arthritis and all of that. I'm gonna switch over, and take some questions, and just see if, so far we follow, and anybody has any questions. Just looking in the chat to see if there are any questions. Okay, great. If there are no questions, I take it that you guys follow me. Do you guys follow? If you follow, please drop a comment in the chat. What's a good fasting insulin number? Thank you. That's a very, very good question. And somebody asked, how do you fix insulin resistance? Wonderful. I'm glad that you asked that, because that's what I'm about to go into shortly. So gifted Caribbean girl, hang on. I will show you the same question from Milan. How do you fix insulin resistance? I'm going to talk to you guys about 2 ways to fix insulin resistance. One of them is just going to be a simple lifestyle option. And the other one is some lifestyle changes you can make. And the other one is a nutraceutical. I'll give you 2 options on how to fix insulin resistance. A good fasting insulin should be in the level of 2 to 5. 2 to 5 to answer that question. Now, thank you for that, and hang tight. I'm going to talk to you how you fix insulin resistance. But before I explain to us how you fix insulin resistance, what I like to do is to explain to you how the breakdown occurs. You see, I have just explained to you that insulin resistance is a breakdown in this process. A breakdown in this process. Now, how does a breakdown occur? How many of you guys have cars, or how many of you guys have had to take your car to the mechanic sometime because it broke down? If you did, drop a comment in the chat. What does the mechanic do the very first thing when you take your car to the mechanic with a complaint, oh, my car has broken down? The mechanic runs diagnostic, correct? Trying to figure out how the breakdown occurred, because by understanding how the breakdown occurred, then they can fix the problem. So that's what I want to do. I want you to understand, yes, I've defined that insulin resistance is a breakdown in this process. But how does the breakdown occur? Because when you understand how the breakdown occurs, when I start speaking to how you fix insulin resistance, because you have a grasp of how the breakdown occurs, then it helps you in fixing insulin resistance. So this is how the breakdown of insulin resistance occurs. There are 2 ways in which insulin resistance occurs. Number 1, the breakdown occurs by what I call too much fat. Too much fat. And that leads to the second way in which the breakdown occurs, what we call too much insulin. Okay? You have all heard it said that too much of a good thing is a bad thing. It's true. It's a true saying. You know, and too much insulin and too much fat really demonstrate this. You see, our bodies have two sources of energy. The two sources of energy we have, you know, are glucose and fat. Those are the two sources of energy. During the daytime when our metabolism is high, the main source of energy is glucose. The body uses glucose to make ATP. During the nighttime when we're sleeping, we're fasting, our activities are low, glucose levels are low, so the body has to switch its reliance on glucose, and the body now switches to a reliance on fat, okay, during the nighttime. So we need fat. Fat is important. From every food that we eat, the body takes a quarter of it and stores it as glucose, and another quarter and stores it as fat. And the fat that is good for us is what we call subcutaneous fat. It's the fat that I can pinch, you know, on the surface of my skin. And the body will use that during periods of low glucose. That is how we switch glucose to fat. Now, too much fat is not good, and this is what too much fat does. And how does too much fat come about? Too much fat, by the way, does not come from eating. Too much fat doesn't come from eating fatty foods, okay? If your doctor has told you, you know, you need to stop eating fatty foods because you're overweight, they miss the point. It's not true. Fatty foods are actually good for you. The fatty meats and all of that, they're actually good for you. You know where too much fat comes from? Excess calories, refined grains, and what have you. We're consuming way more calories today than our ancestors did. In fact, the data shows that we consume 20% more calories than our ancestors did 100 years ago. When we eat more calories than the body needs, the body takes, you know, those excess calories and converts them into fat. Okay? Any excess calories more than our body needs, the body converts that to fat. And when the body converts that to fat, the body takes that fat and stores that fat into a cell. So this is how a cell is supposed to normally look like. This cell is supposed to normally look like that. I just want to make sure you guys are with me. A cell is supposed to normally look like that. Now, when we consume way too much calories than we're supposed to, those excess calories are converted into fat. The body now takes that fat and stores it. I'm going to draw a replica of this cell and stores it in this cell. So this is fat. Consider this to be fat that the body has now taken and stored in that cell. So this cell now is what I call a fat-laden cell. Fat-laden. It is pregnant with fat. It's fat-laden. And this is a big problem. Why is this a big problem? Because remember, the job of insulin, you know, is to command glucose, is to cause glucose in the blood to enter the cell. So in this cell that normally looks like that, it is free. This cell can easily take up glucose at the command of insulin. But when this cell is fat-laden because of chronic overnutrition, resulting in this cell being stuffed with fat. When insulin comes and knocks on the door of this cell, knock, 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 you know, insulin comes, knocks on the door of this cell, knock, 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 I got glucose in the blood, I want you to take it up, take it up. You know what the cell tells insulin? Sir, where do you want me to put glucose? Like, I have no room in my like, where do you expect me to bring glucose in and put it? And the cell has a valid concern here. There's no room in the because it's all laden with fat. And the cell tells insulin, I'm sorry, there's no room. I can't bring him in. And when glucose cannot go into the cell, then you cannot have, you know, ATP being produced. And glucose cannot go into the cell. Why? because the cell is pregnant with fat from too much fat. And that's one way in which the breakdown of insulin resistance occurs. Now, this cell is just trying to protect itself. Thanksgiving is coming up next month, and it's a holiday that, you know, we are at risk of eating way too much than we need to eat. I want to use the analogy of Thanksgiving. If you've ever eaten too much on Thanksgiving and you regret and like, oh, I feel so full. That's me. I have eaten, several times too much on Thanksgiving. If you have ever had that feeling of too full on Thanksgiving, drop a comment in the chat, too full. When you eat too much on Thanksgiving and your Thanksgiving stuffed, the last thing in the world that you think, you say, oh, you feel disgusted with yourself, like, oh, I'm so full. The last thing in the world you're thinking about is bringing in another spoon of anything to shove in your mouth. Even if that spoon of anything is your favorite food in the world, that's the last thing you're thinking about. That's the same thing that this cell is feeling. This cell feels stuffed, like Thanksgiving stuffed. It is so stuffed. The last thing in the world it's thinking about is bringing in another spoon of glucose to put in its already stuffed belly. So you could understand how the cell feels when it denies to open its doors to insulin. So that's how the breakdown of insulin resistance occurs. That's how the breakdown of insulin resistance occurs. That's the first way in which the breakdown occurs. I thank you for your comments. Now, that's just one way in which the breakdown occurs. That first step results in the second breakdown. The second breakdown is too much insulin. Too much insulin. And the first breakdown actually results in the second breakdown, too much insulin. So I want to go back to the whiteboard and explain to you how, the second breakdown occurs. And I will come back and take any questions. Now, we have talked about the first breakdown, too much fat. Now we're going to talk about too much insulin. Number one, we said the first way in which the breakdown occurs is too much fat. And this first way now results in the second breakdown, too much insulin. Just like too much fat is no bueno, too much insulin is equally no bueno. Okay? Too much of a good thing is a bad thing. If you agree, say agree. All right. How does too much insulin cause insulin resistance? I want you guys first to understand this. There is a one-to-one relationship between glucose concentration and insulin secretion. One-to-one, one-for-one. So if glucose concentration is high, insulin secretion. So if glucose concentration is high in the blood, insulin secretion by the pancreas is going to be high. If glucose concentration is high, insulin secretion by the pancreas is going to be high. A one-to-one relationship. I want you to keep that as a premise as we talk about too much insulin. Now, remember, I started this talk by saying insulin is hormone numero uno in terms of importante because it is like the CEO of a company. It's the CEO that dictates the structure and function of the company. And now how does too much fat result in too much insulin? Let's see this. Remember this cell that is fat laden and feels Thanksgiving stuffed. Oh, I ate too much turkey or what have you. And refuses to open its doors to glucose because it's so full. what happens is that glucose begins to accumulate in the blood like that. All right? Glucose accumulates in the blood because the cell is not able to take up glucose. Because of this relationship, when glucose concentration is high, insulin concentration is high, that high amount of glucose triggers the pancreas to produce a high amount of insulin, too much insulin. Now, let's go back to insulin being the CEO of a company. I'm going to flip over. Now, if you have a CEO of a company, insulin, the CEO of the company, dictates the structure and functioning of the company. You have a CEO, a boss of the company. And one day that boss comes to work and he has gone off. He's gone crazy. He's backing unreasonable orders. He's being a bully and a tyrant. He's saying you're going to do it my way or the highway. Just loud to the employees, disrespecting them. What happens is that the employees lose respect for that boss. That's what happens when insulin is high. When insulin is now high in the cell, in the blood, because of a high glucose, what that is like a tyrannical boss. A CEO who is normally supposed to dictate the normal structure and functioning of the company. The CEO has gone off. The boss has gone off. He's acting crazy. He's acting wild. He's acting tyrannical, being a bully. And when a boss acts like that, the employees lose their respect for the boss. If I have a boss and I lose my respect for that boss, it's harder for me to do what the boss asked me to do. So if my boss man has gone off and is crazy and I've lost the respect I used to have for him, if the boss comes to me and tells me, hey, Dr. Dieter, we have this project that is due in 90 days. Can you roll your sleeves up and get this project done? And let's say if usually I'm on my A game, I'm giving my all, because I've lost my respect for the boss because he has now become tyrannical. Instead of giving my A game to that project, I may get that project done at the 90-day mark as my boss wants me to. But instead of getting that project done, with my A game, I may give that project my B+ game or my C+ game. I don't give it my all. When you don't respect somebody, when they give you a command to do, when they are your superior, they give you a command to do, you do it begrudgingly. You don't do it with all your heart. Do you agree? Do you agree with that assessment? If you had a boss that you lost respect for, I want to know your thoughts. Is it harder to do what the boss says, or is it easier to do what the boss says? I want to know your thoughts, whether you feel the same way like I will. Let me see your thoughts. How many of you, if you lost respect for your boss, it's easy for you to give your 100% to the boss's command? If it's not easy, let me know. It's harder, correct? Harder. It's just natural, guys. That's just natural, our natural instincts, That's just how things will flow. The same is the situation for the cell. I want to flip back. The same is the situation for the cell. I want you to think about it like this. When insulin is running high, insulin has become tyrannical, has become a bully to the cell. It's coming to the cell, shoving the cell, giving the cell unreasonable demands, pushing the cell around, telling the cell, you must do what I ask you to do, how I want you to do, when I want you to do it. No ifs, no ands, no buts. That high tone of insulin to the cell, it loses its respect. And just like the employees, when they lose their respect, do not do what the boss says. when the cell loses its respect for insulin, the cell has little or no desire to do what insulin asks it to do. And what's the number one thing that insulin asks the cell to do? Hey cell, open your doors in so that you can take in glucose. So when the cell loses its respect, you know what the cell does? It closes. If this door is supposed to be this way, it closes it. It makes it narrower. It makes it harder for glucose to come into the cell because it has lost its respect. Now that's a bad thing, because when the cell has closed its doors because it lacks respect for insulin, it has lost its respect for insulin, what happens is that it causes more glucose to accumulate in the blood. Because the cell has closed its doors, you even have a situation of more glucose accumulating in the blood because the cell has closed its doors. Now, that more glucose that has accumulated in the blood, remember the one-to-one relationship between glucose and insulin. When glucose goes high, insulin goes high. That concentration of glucose that has gone up even more causes the pancreas to produce even more insulin. So you now have even a higher amount of insulin. So check this out. As if it was not enough that boss man had gone cuckoo, boss man now raises his cuckoo level from here to here. You know what the employees do? They lose even more respect for boss man. When they lose even more respect for boss man, it's harder and harder for them to do what the CEO asked them to do. Same thing with the cell. When insulin becomes even higher, the cells lose even more respect for insulin. When the cells lose even more respect for insulin, they close their doors even tighter, and you have a situation where glucose continues to go up in the blood. So it's just like a vicious cycle. That glucose going up in the blood, triggering that back and causing this, just a vicious cycle over and over and over and over again. That's how too much fat and too much insulin result in insulin resistance. I'm going to flip over now. After answering that question, I'm going to of how we develop insulin resistance. What I'm going to do now is to teach how do you reverse it. Because it's if you know all of these issues, how insulin resistance occurs, and you don't know how to fix the problem, what good is it? So what I want to do is to give you two solutions, two ways to reverse insulin resistance. One of them we're going to talk about, and take notes if you want to. We're going to talk about a simple lifestyle changes that you can do to reverse insulin resistance. And the other, we're going to talk about the nutraceutical approach. So let me write that down on the board. So I'm going to give you guys two approaches to reverse insulin resistance. It's always good for you to have options, not to be kind of tied down to one thing. So you have flexibility. So I'm going to give you two options. One of this is just simply a lifestyle approach. Okay? And the second option I'll give you is a nutraceutical approach, a nutraceutical product. Any of these, if you were to do them and do them consistently, you will fix your insulin resistance. A nutraceutical approach. Okay, I'll flip back over and I'm going to see if I can share a document with you on the lifestyle approach. First of all, I hope this works. Let's see. Is it effects? Let's see. Okay. So, all right. So you could pay attention to this as I talk on the board. So this will be talking about the nutraceutical approach. So you can take a picture of this and on what have you and pay attention to that as I follow. So, we'll be talking about the lifestyle approach. So just follow that attachment and we're going to go through. And I use an acronym here, and that acronym I call easing. That acronym, easing, really standing for ease insulin resistance. Ease insulin resistance. That's the acronym. Easy. Okay? I'm going to start with the very first one, E. And please just follow the attachment or the document I put up there, and you can take a picture of that. E stands for eating fiber. Fiber is very important, in helping with reversing, insulin resistance. Very important. And you should eat as that, so eat fiber. You should eat at least 30 to 40 grams of fiber a day. 30 to 40 grams of fiber a day. The other thing is try to incorporate protein in your diet. Incorporate protein in your diet and little carbs. And you should eat in this order. When you have food to eat, try to eat your fiber foods first, your proteins and your fat second, and your carbohydrate last. And try to limit the amount of carbohydrates that we eat. Carbohydrate is the food class that is the number one cause of insulin resistance, diabetes, pre-diabetes, and most of the modern illnesses that we face in society today. So that's the first one, eating fiber. Eat at least 30 to 40 grams of fiber a day. You see, it's recommended that if you are a man, you need to eat. If you are a man, you need to eat 38 grams of fiber a day. If you are a woman, it's recommended that you take in 25 grams of fiber a day. In the United States, the NIH estimates that the average man and woman, unfortunately, takes in 10 to 12 grams of fiber a day, which is less than 50% of our required daily intake. So you can understand why insulin resistance can be an issue because we're not taking in enough fiber. So that's number one, E. So that's the first acronym there, E, standing for eating fiber. I'm gonna flip over, and okay, I'm gonna flip over and make sure that you guys follow. Do you guys follow me so far? If you follow, drop a comment in the chat. I follow. The second letter in the acronym there is A. A stands for, as you will see on there, A stands for alcohol audit. Okay. Alcohol audit, and also avoid smoking. So try to these two things, alcohol audit and smoking. Limit the amount of alcohol you take in. It plays a role in insulin resistance. Also try to limit or no smoking or vaping. Those two things, will help to ease your insulin resistance. Number 3 is something that is very elusive. S, sleep and stress. Sleep and stress. It's important that we sleep at least 7 to 9 hours a day. 7 to 9 hours a day. And when you wake up in the morning, try to expose yourself to sunlight within the first hours of waking up, even if it's for 10-15 minutes. That's very important in setting your biological clock and rhythm, and helping to ease insulin resistance. The other thing you should also do is breathing exercises or meditation. Breathing exercises for about 2 to 5 minutes, or meditation, or any kind of daily prayer. That's important. You may think that has no bearing, but that has bearing on our psyche, that has bearing on insulin resistance. So that's S. Then the I in the easing is standing for intervals. And the intervals we're talking about is the interval of intermittent fasting, 16-8. Okay? Intermittent fasting. You need to, I'll switch over here. Intermittent fasting. You need to adopt a discipline of intermittent fasting. Why is that? Intermittent fasting is very important. Let's put this right here so that you guys could see my face. Okay. Intermittent fasting is very important in reversing insulin resistance, because intermittent fasting goes and causes the fat that had accumulated in that cell to break down, to burn out, and free the cell of the fat that was preventing the glucose from getting into the cell. So eating in a 16-hour window, eating in an 8-hour window and fasting in a 16-hour window. Just doing that. And the easiest way to do that is you remove from your meal plan breakfast. You only eat lunch and dinner. And then after dinner, nothing else to eat or drink that has calories except water until breakfast the next day. Also remove unsweetened drinks, from your diet outside of that window. So that's the I. And let's go to the N in easing. The N in easing is needs. Needs and strength. NEAT stands for non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Non-exercise activity thermogenesis are all the movements that you do outside of a formal workout, like walking, like standing, like doing chores, like fidgeting. All those things fall under NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So those things. So how would that look like? Make sure you get about 8 to 10,000 steps a day. Every 1 hour, make sure that you're not sitting for a long period of time. You guys may have heard sitting is the new smoking. Every 1 hour, when the clock, when it's the top of every hour, get up and go walk for, even if it's 30 seconds, and come back. That contributes to your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, and that helps to ease insulin resistance. Walking 10 to 15 minutes after a meal, and trying to do some kind of resistance training exercise. Your muscles, the muscles are very good in soaking up glucose and very good in easing insulin resistance. So by doing some kind of resistance training about 2 to 3 times a week, will be in that there. The last thing is the gut. The gut. And in the gut, we're talking about eating fermented foods and prebiotic foods. I'm going to move over here. Any recommendations for bad memory due to being in the diabetic coma? I would love to. And these things that I am talking about, Barney, you are able, if you were able to do these things, these lifestyle things, they can help your bad memory. I also talk to you about a nutraceutical that can have a similar effect. Now, your gut loves fermented foods. Your gut also loves fibers. So consuming fermented foods like kimchi, kefir, kombucha, sauerkraut, those are good things. Onions, garlic, leeks, asparagus, green banana, those are good things for your body. Fermented foods and prebiotic foods. The prebiotic foods are the onion, garlic, leeks, asparagus, oats, green banana. So if you did those lifestyle changes, you're going to reverse your insulin resistance just by doing those lifestyle changes. Now, I want to now talk to you about another option, because some of you are going to look at this and say, hey, doc, this is too much. My schedule is too busy. I'm not able to do the easing, insulin resistance with these lifestyle changes. I get it, and so I like to give people options. And so the second option is a nutraceutical product. The nutraceutical product. And let me go back to the board. So the second option in trying to address your insulin resistance, if the first option, this lifestyle changes, are just too much for your busy life to be able to incorporate, there is an easier thing that you can do. Easier thing that you can do is a nutraceutical option. Number 2, a nutraceutical approach. What's a nutraceutical? A nutraceutical is a product that is made 100% from plants, but has a lot of more health benefits than it has nutritional benefits. That's what a nutraceutical is. So that's the second option to be able to reverse insulin resistance. And I want to show you guys the nutraceutical. This is a nutraceutical. This is a nutraceutical that I have been using and had a lot of success with patients in helping them to reverse their insulin resistance using these 2 nutraceuticals. One of this is a polyphenol-rich tea that helps to reverse insulin resistance, balance your blood sugars, causes you to burn fat and remove the fat that has accumulated in the cell. And the other one, helps to also do the same thing. It causes you to burn fat. This is fiber. This second product is just fiber. What fiber does is that it helps to balance your blood sugars. It helps to cause you to burn fat. It helps to feed your gut with the right foods, for your gut to be healthy. A healthy gut is very important in reversing insulin resistance. So these 2 products are listed in what we call the physician's desk reference. If you were to go to the physician's desk reference, you will find these 2 products. I became aware of this as a physician sometime in March of this year, and I have found it to be a very important second alternative as an advice to patients who are not able to do the lifestyle approach. Just consuming this, I take 2 of this a day. Just consuming these 2 things help to reverse your insulin resistance. What I want to do now is I want to end by showing you guys some pictures, some before and after pictures of using the nutraceutical product, and some of the effects that it did. I will start by showing you guys my picture. So this is a picture of me, and this is a picture of me, and in this picture, let's see. All right, this is a picture of me. And in this picture, I weighed 220 pounds. I had insulin resistance, and I was an unhealthy doctor. This was 2019. I did some of the lifestyle changes that I talked to you about. I started eating a little bit more fiber. I was doing intermittent fasting. I was doing a lot of walking, the non-exercise activity, thermogenesis. And after doing that, I was able to lose 50 pounds. And I went to looking like this. This is what I was able to. I went to looking like this just by doing those lifestyle changes. So I want to tell you that lifestyle changes can work. They can help you to be on your journey, to be able to reverse your insulin resistance. So I lost 50 pounds by just doing those lifestyle changes that I was telling you about. But I got stuck at this, and I wanted to lose a little bit more weight, but I could not lose more weight. And I had continued to run and what have you. And then luckily, a colleague of mine, a physician, introduced me to these nutraceuticals sometime in March and told me these nutraceuticals are very good in helping to fight insulin resistance. And so I started taking them, and in a space of 2 months, this is what happened to me. I went from looking like the guy in black to looking like the guy in the salmon in a space of 2 months. And really, what did this for me is just introducing these nutraceuticals into my lifestyle. And I was able to do that. Now, I want to show you guys some other pictures. This is my twin sister. My twin sister was overweight. And after I learned about this, I shared this with her too. And she started using this, and in a space of 2 months, she lost 26 pounds. And that was her transformation. Just with the nutraceutical. So if you're the kind of person that the lifestyle is gonna fit for you, go for it. If you're the kind of person that it will not, and you just want a simple option, the nutraceutical is a simple option. As I say, I like giving people choices. These are some other pictures before and after using the nutraceutical product, and a change. This is somebody who had acne using the nutraceutical product. A change before and after. Insulin resistance drives acne. You address the insulin resistance, the acne goes away. This is another person. Insulin resistance causes you to age and causes you to be inflamed. By her using this nutraceutical product, she was able to age younger, and doesn't look that inflamed anymore, and has been able to lose weight and reverse her insulin resistance. This is Jonathan. Jonathan had psoriasis and lost 50 pounds using the protocol, reversing his insulin resistance. Remember, guys, insulin resistance is the water pooling on the floor. It causes you to have all these chronic conditions. So when you reverse insulin resistance, those diseases go away. This is Angelita before and after. This is my friend John. John was a type 2 diabetic for 25 years. He had done everything he could try with medications. And our current medical system was failing him. He had been on chronic diabetic medications for so long. John had an ulcer on his foot that could not heal. John heard about this protocol last year, and in desperation, he was so desperate. He heard about this. In his desperation, he decided to give it a try. In a space of 1 month, John lost 60 pounds. In that same 1 month, in a space of 1 month, John lost his diagnosis of diabetes. In a space of 2 months, John had lost 60 pounds. John is no longer diabetic. This is another before and after picture. This lady had triglycerides dropped from 249 to 77 just using the nutraceutical. It helped to be able to reverse her high cholesterol. This is a before and after picture of a couple who were overweight, and just by using the nutraceutical product, easy, were able to go to looking healthier. You see, they have all lost their fat handles and belly and looking younger and vibrant. This is another patient before and after. When you have insulin resistance, guys, what it happens is that when you have insulin resistance, one of the things is that it causes you to gain weight. Insulin resistance goes and locks up your fat in the jail cell. So anything you do, whether you're running, you're doing this, you're doing that, if you're not addressing your insulin resistance, you're not going to be able to lose weight. But when you address the insulin resistance, the fat now gets released from the jail cell, and if your problem was weight, you begin to lose weight. And so that's why I had that transformation, going from looking like this to looking like that. So some of these pictures that you see people with a big transformation is the result of that. This is another before and after picture of somebody who used this protocol of the nutraceutical, who had insulin resistance. This is Builder Sue. Sue was actually, she had arthritis, she was having memory problems, her family thought she had early onset dementia. They were actually planning on putting her in a nursing home. Insulin resistance drives your thought, your brain fog, your energy, your arthritis. She heard about this product, she was desperate, she tried it, and after trying this, within 2 months, within 2 months, Sue's memory came back, arthritis went away, she became vibrant, and she lost a lot of weight. Look at her. If you told me that this lady on the right side was a grandmother, I wouldn't argue with you. I would say she smells like a grandmother, she acts like a grandmother, she's a grandmother. If you told me that this lady on the other side was a grandmother, I will wrestle with you a little bit, because it's not that obvious. And that's what insulin resistance does to you. Another story, before and after insulin resistance, before and after. This was a diabetic. Before and after is no longer diabetic. PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, diabetic, sleep apnea, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, all gone. So these are all people who use the protocol, and by using that, they were able to reverse their insulin resistance. Even kids are able to do that using the nutraceutical product to do that. So those are some pictures. I want to show you one last picture. This is somebody who was diabetic. Taye Tijana, I'm going to look at your question and try to answer it. Thank you. Her A1C went from greater than 14 to 5.9, just addressing her insulin resistance. This is Cody. Cody lost 70 pounds in 6 months just using this nutraceutical product. 70 pounds in 6 months, and was able to get his life back. So I've given you guys two options. I need to show you guys this. This is my friend Natasha. Natasha is a colleague of mine. We went to medical school together. Natasha is the one who actually introduced me and told me about this nutraceutical. So since then, I've been using it to help many of my patients as an option. And that was Natasha's before and after picture. And let's see. So let me go to your question. Let's see. What's your question? How long before you see these changes? That's a good question. God is good. Every patient is dependent. Every patient is unique. So the changes are dependent on where you are in terms of how sick you are, in terms of how much, where you are in your insulin resistance spectrum. But some people start seeing some changes within a week. Some people start seeing some changes within 2 to 3 weeks. Some people start seeing some changes within 4 to 6 weeks. But there are some noticeable changes that when you start addressing your insulin resistance, within the first 1 or 2 days, you will notice. You're going to notice your energy levels go up. Because when you're addressing insulin resistance, you're now making more energy. So you're going to notice an instant change in your energy levels. Let's see. I'm trying to look for your question, Tae Tijana. Let's scroll. Thank you for your comment, Kim. I appreciate your comment. Thank you. Okay, so Taye, your question was, do you still drink your diabetes meds. Can you re-ask your question? Are you asking if you still take this with your diabetes medications? Is that your question? If do you still take this with your diabetes medication? If that's your question, the answer is yes. You can still take this with your diabetes medications. But what's gonna happen is that as these nutraceutical products begin to improve your insulin resistance, you're gonna notice that your blood sugars and your diabetes is getting better, and your doctor may need to tweak the doses of your diabetes medications or even get you off those diabetes medications. I had a patient I was working with, who started off using these products, and within the first 2 to 3 weeks that he was on the product, because his blood sugars got so low, I decreased his insulin by 50%. And then 2 weeks after, his blood sugars remained so good, I took him off insulin. So you can start on the product, and depending on how your blood sugars are, there could be a slow wean in that. So that is it. I want to end by saying two things. I have given you two options on how to reverse insulin resistance. People need to have choices, and some of you will love the choices of lifestyle. Some of you will love the choices of the nutraceutical. Whichever you gel, you have those choices. Make the choice. Somebody is asking, where do you buy the nutraceutical product? Thank you for asking that, because that's the last thing that I want to show you. Where do you buy the nutraceutical product? So I want to show you. I'm going to go to my. Let's put this down. Okay, so when you go to my profile, right? You go to my TikTok profile. What you're going to do on my TikTok profile, you're going to see here where it says links. These HTTP links. You click on that. When you click on that, it's going to give you two links here. One link is the link to where you can buy the very first link is the link to where you can buy the product. And the second link is really my YouTube channel. I do a lot of education on YouTube about this. So if you like to learn more about different health conditions, please, you could subscribe to my YouTube channel. But right here, when you click on that link, it's going to take you directly to the company that makes the product. When you get to this page, all you need to do is hit this button that says buy now. When you hit buy now, it's going to take you to this page where the right product has already been selected for you. The right product has already been selected for you, and all you need to do is to scroll down and you hit add to cart. When you hit add to cart, it's going to take you to this page where you say checkout. And when you hit checkout, that's it, you can get it. And so that's how you get it. If you have any trouble getting this, following that direction at all, send me a direct message. If that was too quick in me showing you how to get it and you're interested in getting the nutraceutical product, just send me a direct message and I will send you a link on how to get it. Again, two ways. You can reverse insulin resistance in two ways. You can use this lifestyle approach, to ease insulin resistance, the mnemonic I've given you. And if you were to do those religiously, you will help to do that. Number two is you can just, if the lifestyle approach is too much, then a simple option will be just to introduce these products, these nutraceutical products, and that will help you do that. You're going to need to talk to your primary care doctor about that, Taye. Unfortunately, because I'm not your doctor, I cannot advise you on, on how to go about it. You can take your medicines with this, but the point I'm trying to make is that as your insulin resistance improves, you're going to notice that your issues improve, whether it's blood pressure or diabetes or what have you. Those will improve, and you're going to notice that you may not need to be on those medicines again. But that's something that you're going to need to coordinate with your primary care doctor to be able to help you sort that out. I hope that answered your question. Well, thank you very much for being on my live today. I look forward to doing one of these teaching sessions again. And if you have any questions or you have any issues or you need the link to order the nutraceutical product, please send me a direct message, and I'll send you the link. Thank you. Bye.